the game is rigged. We don't care if you figured out a way to beat the game. We're just going to make up new rules. We'll just make them up as we go.
Because they can.
And that should spark a revolution, if you will. But it hasn't happened yet. And I don't know what it's going to take to get our country in gear. And so I'm wondering, as we, kind of wind down the conversation, what you think the evolution of this crypto movement is going to be next, in light of the fact that Wall Street, and especially it appears the Democrats, led by Elizabeth Warren of all people, they're trying to crush this. They don't want people having another alternative. It's so ironic that Warren is involved in this.
No, it isn't.
Well, I guess not, but whatever. But I am curious as to where you ultimately see this going, because it looks like the powers that be, the Wall Street power brokers, are going to try to buy off Congress to pass laws to basically effectively kill crypto trading.
There's two things I want to say on that. So I think that Congress are naive and are probably unable to regulate the crypto markets in a way that will be enough to shut it down, because it's a technology that has no centralization. Like, that's the attraction. And I think that plus their lack of knowledge or understanding of it they might put some bumps in the road, but the technology and the idea of it will, if it is good enough, I think it will succeed regardless. The other thing is that, like, the GameStop thing has brought this amazing movement happening, like, behind the scenes, that I've been speaking to a few people, and I'm not sure exactly how much I'm allowed to say, but there's at least, I know, a website set up for a service called The Terminal, and they're attempting to, like, take all this interest in investing and turn it into a new platform where individual people can get access to the same sort of data and analysis that they have on Wall Street, and to be able to make it like a social platform, sort of like Reddit, sort of like Clubhouse, and sort of like OnlyFans. I've had it explained to me as well, but for finance. They said it was like OnlyFans for trading, I think was the tagline they told me. But essentially they're trying to take advantage of all of this focus that is on this and use it to not let the momentum and the interest and the desire to make a fairer system sort of fizzle out. And I'm hopeful that they will succeed in trying to, take something out of all the interest that's focused on this at the minute, and turn it into something more tangible. So we'll see how it goes. Gary Gensler at the SEC is doing a great job, seems, at least anyway. The CNBC did an interview with him about all of the fraud that was going on, and some of the corrupt practices, like dark pool trading, which I'm still trying to get my head around. But it's essentially like a shady back exchange where a lot of the orders of retail investors are getting routed through. But he did an interview on CNBC, and they cut part of the interview out when they posted it. And he took the part that they cut out and tweeted it. Like, what a hero. And he's working for the SEC. He's the head of the SEC. So it seems that at least we've got someone who's not bought off yet in charge of regulating this. So it's looking like maybe there's a chance. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, we try to be optimistic here. We're used to these Sisyphean tasks and not really getting very far, but it's baby steps.
The only way that we could actually have a trading market that is fair is there is a cap in terms of how much stock you can own in a company. If there was a cap in terms of how much stock you can own, it means that it can only be manipulated so much in terms of the price structure. So if you have a billionaire who sees an IPO that he really wants to get involved in and decides to buy 5 million shares, for example, of a particular company, well, who can afford 5 million shares of an IPO that's starting at $50 a share? Nobody would be able to do that unless it's the super rich. You're at a certain level where you wouldn't be able to put, $40, $50 million into a stock. But if you had a cap limit to, let's say, kind of like almost like an IRA or 401k, you have like a certain limit in terms of what you can touch for a certain period of time. And you could say that this particular stock, you can buy 2,000 shares, and that goes for everybody. And obviously there would be strict regulation. Like you can't create 50 accounts and just buy 2,000 shares doing it that way. If the market was regulated that way, there would be there would be much more of a consumer control of the market and a lot less price manipulation, because there wouldn't be as much to gain. And that to me is how you would do this. It's one of the reasons why Bitcoin in reality is much more effective than Dogecoin, because Dogecoin has no cap. Whereas Bitcoin does have a cap. There's a limit to how many Bitcoins have actually been created. It's why it became so commodified. And one Bitcoin 10 years ago was worth, I think, maybe like $1,500. Today, it was peaking right around $60,000, which is amazing. I mean, $1,500, if you had invested, let's say $25,000, $30,000, a few years ago, 10 years ago, you'd be a millionaire today. So there's no question that if you do it that way, and that's really the idea behind investing, is that it's really supposed to be long term. It's not supposed to be short term.
Yeah, like it's not about the gambling immediately. The one thing I would say actually on what you said is like I kind of like the idea, but I feel like that's really difficult to enforce. It's a really difficult one to actually because like someone might just be the owner of the company and want to buy all the shares. The better way forward, and this is something that's been proposed by people in the GameStop community, is to have everything to be traded like a cryptocurrency on a blockchain where everything is visible. Because one of the biggest problems that people are having whilst trying to figure out what's happening with the GameStop saga is that everything is sort of a bit shady and a bit in the shadows, and sometimes you can see what's going on and sometimes you can, and they can route things through different ways of buying and shares or selling things. And if everything is like there and on the blockchain, it's not relying on hedge funds to tell you accurately what their positions are, because as Jim Cramer kind of pointed out, it's literally the truth is antithetical to their game.
Craig Kramer? Okay.
Yeah. He there's this amazing video on YouTube of him doing a behind this, like a special interview like 15 years ago or 10 years ago for some hedge funds on Wall Street. And I don't think it was ever meant to see the light of day, but it's him basically laying out how, if you're in a hedge fund, you can try and manipulate the markets in specific ways, and how you can, call your mate at the Wall Street Journal and like spread some rumors if you don't like what's happening. And he was talking about, say you wanted to short Apple, you expected the price to go down, you could call someone at the Wall Street and be like, oh yeah, I've heard AT&T and Verizon are not happy about the contract Apple wants, and all of a sudden you spread a little doubt. And he spends like 20 minutes laying out how to manipulate a market. And it's on YouTube. People can go and search for it.
Right. It's just legal thievery.
Well, I think in a way it's
just legal thievery.
We're also seeing just sort of this new generation come up and see the markets in a different way than the people who were part of, let's say, the boomer generation, in terms of how, trading used to take place in the 1980s. It's not like that anymore. And people are much more aware. Obviously, when in the 90s they started trading on computers primarily, a lot of that's evolved over time. And we obviously saw what happened with the dot-com bubble. Mark Cuban is probably the best example of that. I mean, he really was in the right place at the right time and nailed it as perfectly as you could, because as soon as Yahoo bought his company, it basically tanked within, I think, less than 2 years. And Mark was able to make, I think, like $2.5 billion net off of the sale of his, I think it was computer programming. It was just remarkable how lucky he got. I don't think there's a lot of good, wealthy people out there. There really isn't. But Mark seems to be maybe the one person that I look to that I actually think has at least an ounce of humanity in him for somebody who happens to be a billionaire. And I do listen to some of the things that he talks about, but he really is like that outsider. There's not a lot of people like that. Most of them are like, they are like the Koch brothers in a sense, that everyone has, their share of the pie that they want. They don't care how many people they have to crush in the process, and they don't care how much pillaging on the planet they have to do either to get it.
No.
And so that's the lesson that I think needs to be learned here about what is the future of crypto going to look like. Because a lot of these billionaire guys, especially the older ones, they don't really understand it. They can hire consulting firms and pay them.
I think they understand it just fine.
They understand
it's a threat.
They understand it's a threat. They understand that they can't control it. And that's the problem. And I'm telling you, they like sitting in their ivory towers looking down on the commoners. They really do.
Dr. Evil.
They're all a bunch of Montgomery Burns. They're all
horrible.
They are. They like this idea of them having it and everyone else not having it. But I think that's also part of the reason why they portrayed Jim Cramer, who is a kooky guy, as just a kooky guy. Like, don't listen to him. But
no,
Cramer,
he's very, very very aware of the stuff that he is spreading. The amount of he has been incredible. He got so mad at the people from Reddit. Like, they were all trolling him on Twitter, and he got so angry. It was so ridiculous. Crypto is a stupid investment. All of my money.
That's our producer. It's a good job. Good, nice job, John. Well done.
Nice to know that you support
the three most powerful MIC corporations in the world.
John, our producer is big in with the military-industrial complex. But
he's just supporting Debbie Wasserman.
He's on her payroll. But I also think it's funny because this is someone who I don't imagine has a very large portfolio.
Oh, goodness gracious!
I mean, John, you should think about divesting some of that.
That's why there really needs to be sort of this unification, as I keep saying, amongst non-corporate, non-partisan labor. That's really what needs to happen. Because people, I honestly don't think people really understand how little they have and how much more they could have. There really are people who literally can win or lose $1 million in a day just doing this stuff that doesn't add any value to society, none whatsoever. This is just rich people throwing money, having money fights. That's all this is. This is rich people having money fights, and they control the world, and we've got to take our power back as people.